Hello everyone, welcome to URBONUS podcast. My name is Donatas URBONUS, I'm the host and I'm joined by my colleague Rytis Vyšniauskas. Hello Rytis, welcome back.
Hey man.
2 weeks ago we were dealing with some first world problems like new EuroLeague websites, commentating Winter Olympics, and then I thought that the biggest battlefield we currently have in Europe was Zvezda Partizan derby in Niš in Serbia, where I was heading to.
Yeah.
But now the world has changed so much, and before talking about basketball, we will have to talk about things which are way bigger than basketball games.
Yeah, unfortunately so. Actually, it's been a while. It's been 2 weeks since our last podcast. You had your trip to Belgrade and I had COVID and I was in isolation for 10 days. So it's been a while. I actually prepared 2 glasses of water because it's going to be more difficult today to talk after this break. However, I used my isolation to watch a lot of basketball games, which was good, obviously. But yeah, as you mentioned, the world has changed. It's not about basketball. So in these days, I think it's for all of us kind of difficult sometimes to concentrate on EuroLeague, on basketball issues, to talk about coaches, players, and stuff like that, because you hear even coaches and players in their interviews, especially, for example, Ergin Ataman saying that the standings don't matter, the games do not matter. This is not the issue right now. So yeah,
remember Shaq McKissick halftime interview in Olympiacos game.
Plenty of examples. We had Demo. I cannot really imagine how referee Boris Rizik felt. He's Ukrainian, and
he was the first one with the sign "Stop the War."
Yeah, we heard Ettore Messina, we heard Šarūnas Jasikevičius in his Spanish press conference. So sometimes I catch myself watching a basketball game nowadays and thinking like, this is not that important right now.
Exactly.
Even though I'm a hardcore fan, I watch all the games. I love to analyze the games the way I can from my own perspective. But sometimes these days it's kind of difficult, really.
Yeah, I mean, you're watching games, you're trying to analyze it, you're preparing for the podcast, but at the same time, you're having these phone calls with concerned parents about their future, their safety, my safety, what's going on very close to Lithuania. And I know that for a lot of people, maybe, it's not so sensitive for them as it is for us. And I know that especially when Paulius Motiejūnas spoke about the issue about playing against Russian teams, that he said that there's no way that Žalgiris will play Russian teams either on Russian soil or outside the country, no matter how the voting will end for the season-ending format. I know that he was very emotional, he was very harsh with his position, and I know that some people were really surprised. I know that a lot of basketball people later talked about that Paulius was just too emotional, too hardcore on his ideas, which he went public about. But at the same time, nobody else... we know better than a lot of people in Europe what it's like when somebody else decides on your future. We know better than many people what it means to be brainwashed for so many years, what it's like to be occupied for 50 years. And even now, after 30 years, when we are free, we still deal with the consequences which impacted our parents, our older generations. So it's really terrible what's going on.
Maybe to some people in Western Europe, everything seems so far away, but it isn't really that far away. And I just want to make a statement about how EuroLeague handled this situation, and I was extremely disappointed. So first of all, when everything started escalating, when Russia started invading Ukraine, let's call it the way it is, there was no reaction from EuroLeague. Then they had a meeting because some of the clubs, the owners, came out with statements that they're not going to play basketball on Russian soil. No one's going to travel to St. Petersburg. No one's going to travel to Moscow. We heard it from Paulius Motiejūnas. We heard it from Tony Parker. So then they had this meeting. And the outcome of the meeting was that we're neutral. We're not mixing sports with politics. The Russian teams will play on neutral venues and the season goes on, which was terrible at the moment. We saw all the reactions from people, especially Lithuanian people on EuroLeague's social media. Everyone was really angry. How can you even think about playing with these Russian clubs during the times when Putin's bloody regime is occupying Ukraine. It's horrible, really. The statement that they're not mixing sports with politics, this is not politics. Elections are politics. I mean, transactions between some political leaders, on business between political leaders, this is politics. This is not politics, this is terrorism. Putin's bloody
it's not
regime.
even the war, it's invasion.
It's
and
invasion.
Ukrainians are protecting their homeland.
And when we're talking about these Russian clubs, especially A-licensed CSKA Moscow, one way or another they have ties with Putin. They are actually part of the problem. How can you even think about playing basketball with them? And this shows the flaws in EuroLeague system, because this is like a closed league which is ran by licenses, contracts, and wildcards, and A-licensed clubs are voting on every single matter, including CSKA. So, for example, at the same time, the UEFA just disqualified Spartak Moscow from the Europa League, because Europa League is a tournament to which you qualify on merit. You don't have a contract, you don't have a license, so they were just disqualified, and Leipzig, that were supposed to play Spartak, were automatically put in the quarterfinals. And the EuroLeague, first of all, didn't react at all. They really thought that they could actually go on playing on neutral venues, which was already insane. Then they saw that it's not possible. I mean, even the logistics for the Russian clubs to travel to play somewhere, it was impossible. So then they had another meeting, and the outcome of the second meeting was that they're suspended. They're not going to play. The games that they already played are also suspended. The results are cancelled. However, there is still this deadline until March 21st, and the Russian teams might come back, which is, again, insane. I just cannot really explain how I feel about these decisions and these meetings, because it's something against common sense. We are talking about actual terrorism. Putin is a terrorist. He is invading Ukraine. There's blood on his hands. We're talking about a bloody war. And they're still thinking about a way how the Russian teams could still compete in this season's EuroLeague. It's insane.
Yeah, especially with all these sanctions against Russia, EuroLeague still left that hole, for a comeback. And I tried to check the regulations because there's a big misunderstanding about Jordi Bartomeu and EuroLeague. Because a lot of times people think that Jordi was just sitting in his office and he was making some big-time decisions. Although the truth is that all shareholders, now we have 13 shareholders with Asvel and Bayern as the newest ones, they decide. They usually try to vote. They usually try to find the same common goal or direction where they're going forward to. And the thing is that even in the regulations, it's said that unforeseen circumstances, any matters not provided for in these regulations, such as cases of force majeure, will be decided by the EuroLeague basketball CAO. These decisions are to be ratified by AX shareholders executive board. So it says that more or less clubs decide, but at the same time, I mean, Jordi Bartomeu has so much power to set the tone for the whole organization. A true leader should come out and very clearly put all the arguments on the table and just say what's better for the tournament, what's fair facing this worldwide problem, and this is the direction which EuroLeague should go. Not just some teams decide even right now for the current format, these alternative standings and whatsoever. I mean, Jordi Bartomeu, he has so many good examples. We have Adam Silver. He was very strict with Donald Sterling, for example, at first. He banned him and he forced him to sell LA Clippers. There were some different situations when LGBT rights were kind of, restrained in Charlotte, I think, and he moved the All-Star game from Charlotte to New Orleans, I think. There were all these Black Lives Matter movements, even the NBA bubble to finish the season. Adam Silver, as a great leader, he found a solution, he set the tone, and it turned out to be well for the NBA organization. Right now, it was not the first time where EuroLeague just couldn't handle another crisis. Before, we had so many cases with the start of the pandemic, the continuation of the season, all these rules, crazy rules, which were changed during the season with you remember technicals 20-0, and there were a lot of misunderstandings. And I'm missing, it was another historical chance for Jordan Bartomeu to make history, to come out with a very clear idea what's fair at the moment and how we should deal with these Russian teams. It's not against them. It's not against people working for these clubs. It's against the big regime. And it's one of the ways, the hard restrictions is one of the ways just to stop Putin and his terrorism and his invasion to our country, to make him uncomfortable, not just regularly, but uncomfortable in front of his nation.
There's a stain on EuroLeague's image right now, actually, and this is not the first example, as you said, where we see that this model of 13 shareholders running the league is a mess. You mentioned the pandemic, and I want to elaborate on that a little bit. Let's remember, before the pandemic, we know that the 1920 season was actually cancelled. It was not finished. But then they were preparing for the next season, so they created some rules. What will they do in case when there's a coronavirus eruption in a club? And the first idea was actually that they're going to deal with this by giving away these 20-0 technical losses. And it started happening, I believe, in October already. Mm-hmm. First of all with Zenit and with some other clubs. And then all these people thought, wait a minute, this is not actually fair. We created some rules, but they're not fair. So then they needed another meeting. And in that another meeting, they've discussed, voted, and decided that these 20-0 technical losses are cancelled and these games are postponed and they're going to be played a little bit later. So this is the first example how this is a complete mess. Now we have the second example with the current format. Everyone realizes now that the season is continuing with 15 clubs. I don't think anybody has utopia in their heads that the Russian teams will join at some part of the season. This is impossible. It's going to go on with 15 clubs. Let's be real. And then the question rises about the format. How do you deal with those games that were actually played against the Russian teams and they impact the standings a lot? So after that first meeting, the idea was that the results are cancelled, these games are voided, and for the future games that were supposed to be played, they are also cancelled, voided, no technical wins or losses are being given. Obviously, some of the clubs, some of the A-licensed clubs, prime example being Fenerbahce, were hurt by this decision and they wanted alternatives. And the obvious solution was to count winning percentages, which is why yesterday they had another meeting and another vote.
To be clear, it was not a meeting, but let's say votes by emails.
Okay, yeah. So still it was a vote by these 13 shareholders on a big decision. Yeah. And the funny thing is that obviously CSKA is one of the shareholders and they have a vote on this matter. Why?
And it's super weird because CSKA, Ismail Sanol from beIN Sports, he provided the list of the votes, how teams voted, and he says that, he tweeted that Efes, Bayern, Maccabi, Olympiacos, Baskonia, Žalgiris, CSKA were voting for the current standings and classification, cancelling all these results against Russian teams. And it's crazy because we have CSKA on this side, Žalgiris, Baskonia, bottom EuroLeague teams, and the vote was very close. They won the voting by 7-6, and it's crazy that these three teams, especially with CSKA, I'm very surprised why it didn't just pass the vote, pass the all the voting procedure. These teams decided what's fair for the EuroLeague and what's not, and to be fair, that was a really terrible decision for the whole EuroLeague because there are two main things. Because by this decision, now you send the message that almost 20% of all these games against Russian clubs didn't matter at all. And which means Nikolaitis' injury against CSKA, when he missed 11 EuroLeague games, it didn't matter. Dinos Mitoglou, he suffered an injury which sidelined him for 3 months exactly against Unix. Then they have Ioannis Feropoulos Coach lost 3 games against Russian clubs, and big part of that, later he lost the job. So these games didn't matter at all. There was even one funny example by our collaborator Darius Garuolis. He found some, let's say, he found some interesting or big stats which will be cancelled right now because of all these cancellations. And for example, now EuroLeague recently posted that Nick Kalaitis reached the milestone of EuroLeague assists. I just don't remember the number of the assists he made, but he's all-time assist leader. And cancelling all these games against Russian teams makes him actually the second right now.
He's still behind Spanulis.
Yeah, so now they will have to post it again after a few games. So it's just ridiculous. And the worst part is that now this format gives an advantage to the teams like Bayern, who lost 3 games against Russian clubs. Now they're higher ranked than, for example, Fenerbahce or Monaco, who won 3 or 4 games against Russian clubs. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
That's the bad side of the voting. I mean, the leader, as Jordi Bertomeu is, should come out with a very strong opinion what is fair for the EuroLeague, because this voting was about all these teams and their individual situations, but not for the well-being of the tournament.
For sure. I mean, Bayern, for example, or FS, they're just protecting their current result in the standings because they benefit from cancelling the results with the Russian teams. Fenerbahce suffers. Monaco suffers. Monaco doesn't even have vote because they're not one of the A-licensed clubs, which is another problem. And the outcome for Monaco and Fenerbahce is decided, as you said, by, for example, Žalgiris. It doesn't really concern Žalgiris.
Neither Baskonia.
I mean, if Žalgiris had won in Berlin, maybe they could hype a little bit about theoretical chances about playoffs.
You didn't deserve that, actually. You didn't deserve that.
Of course.
Differently from Monaco or Fenerbahce, because they deserved it on the court, not by some off-the-court decisions.
From the first day, when the decision was made, my initial thought was that it's really unfair and you should count winning percentages, because to cancel these results, what message does it send? As you said, during these games, players got injured. Some of these games were during double game weeks. Maybe teams put a lot of effort and energy playing against Kazan, against Zenit, or against CSKA, and they didn't have enough left in the tank to play the second game on Thursday or on Friday. It also obviously affected their performances in national championships on weekends because they had to fight hard against these teams. Let's be honest, Zenit, Unix, and CSKA, they are top 8 teams. They are very quality teams. So you're canceling these results, which doesn't make any sense. And if you count winning percentages, I think it's fair. You cannot say it's completely fair. There is no situation in this case where everyone's happy, but it is definitely more fair than cancel everything. I mean, come on, it also affects a lot of things. For example, when you choose the MVP of the season, will you think about the performances against Unix, Zenit, and CSKA? Or will you just try to
exclude it?
Erase everything from your head? It didn't even matter that somebody put like 30 or 35 points against some of these clubs. I'm really disappointed about this. I'm not a fan of any of these teams. However, I feel sorry for Fenerbahce. I mean, they had to deal with an injury crisis playing without Vesely and Dekolo. They started getting wins. They were playing a lot better than people expected. They were winning games led by Guduric and Polonara and Henry and Pierre with a very short rotation. All of a sudden, they were in a pretty good situation to reach the top 8. And now you're canceling 3 of their wins. You're leaving them 10th in the standings. Okay, they can still qualify. Okay, they can catch Monaco or Maccabi. But it makes it more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, now they're 10th, and if we kept all these games, if we counted all these games, they were at least 8 and in a way better position than they are right now. So it's just sad, but we just have to move on once again with some bad decision making. And we will try to predict 4 teams, last 4 teams, which will make the playoffs. We kind of agreed that we will for sure have Barcelona, Real Madrid, Milan, and Olympiacos in the playoffs. Because especially now, as we look in the standings, the margin between them and the last 4, let's say for the top 8, it's at least
Although,
3 wins.
I want to say one thing, because we're obviously going to focus on those teams that are catching the train. But these clubs that you mentioned, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Milano, Olympiacos, Anadolu Efes, it will be an interesting race for home court advantage, actually, because it's not a given that Real Madrid or Milano, Olympia, or Olympiacos will finish in top 4, because Anadolu Efes is trying to catch them. Real Madrid really performing not to the level of their standards recently. Milano, Olympia, I'm also not really convinced about their quality right now from their recent games. So Olympiacos is looking in a better shape, and they are actually getting wins. So this is another interesting thing, because when it comes to playoffs, the home court advantage is very important. The playoffs will be somewhere mid-April. Let's imagine that there will be no more COVID restrictions in Greece, and Olympiacos can play a game 5 of a playoff series in a full house. This is a big game changer, actually. So it will be interesting to see these teams competing for home court advantage, although I agree with you that we should lock these teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They will definitely be there.
I completely agree with you. And there's another important thing, not just home court advantage. Watching how FS are playing right now, how confident they are compared to the first part of the season, I don't want to be.
You
the
wouldn't
fourth.
want to face them.
I don't want to face them in the quarterfinals. And the situation is very tight for Olympiacos, Milan, and Real Madrid. I mean, Real and Milan, they have 16 games. Okay, Real played 21 games, while Milan played 22. Olympiacos, they're with 15 victories, and FS, they have 12, but they're still 2 games behind, so they can catch the train. But the thing is that it's gonna be very good fight between Real Madrid, Milan, and Olympiacos, because not just home court advantages on the table.
Just one more thing before we move on to this topic about the teams that should be in the playoffs. I don't want to lose my thought, so I will just,
of course,
give it right
go
now.
with.
If we cancel the results of the games that were played against Russian teams, if these games are canceled and they don't matter, why not refund the fans that actually paid for the tickets?
That's a good point.
These games didn't matter.
Yep.
We're now
So get their money back.
Now
then.
we're pretending that these games were not actually played and they do not exist. So let's give refunds. People paid money to see those games. Why not? And EuroLeague maybe should refund this if these shareholders voted on it. So fine, prepare a financial package to refund your fans.
Nobody gives a fuck about that.
Really. I know. This is why I'm being sarcastic. But it's
that's
just
the worst part.
It's just a thought I had in my head right now.
A lot of people didn't even think about the stats, how it will change the.
They didn't think about anything
averages.
besides from themselves in the standings.
Exactly.
They were voting for themselves.
That's another tragedy of this decision.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry about that.
It was a great point.
Let's move on about the playoffs, which is interesting.
Yeah. And
finally, we're going to talk about basketball.
And I hear that we can agree that Anadolu Efes for sure will be in the playoffs.
Yep.
And we lock them as the 5th team for the playoffs, not just because they have the most games to play. They will still play 8 games.
Yeah.
But they're playing probably the best basketball among all these 6 games we will be talking about. We have to mention that we will be talking about Efes, Bayern, Maccabi, Monaco, Zvezda, and Fenerbahce. With all the respect to Alba Berlin.
But let's give them some credit. I mean,
of course, they deserve a lot of credit.
It's nice to see them competing. It's nice to see them playing smart basketball. This season is definitely a very important one for Israel Gonzalez, as we talked about, a young upcoming coach. I actually don't believe they can make a playoff push, but they got some solid wins right now against Žalgiris, against Asvel, and they can, for example, finish in a 10th position, which would be good for Alba Berlin anyways. But yes, let's be real. They are not in a playoff hunt.
So who's your 6th team in the playoffs?
Well, the schedule is not really friendly for them. However, when I'm picking these teams that will make the playoffs, first of all, I'm thinking about their defensive abilities. And I see 2 clubs that have a lot of talent. They play very open basketball, but they're not really good on defense, which is why I believe they will lack their I mean, they will just lack defense in order to be there in the playoffs.
So defense
first of all,
not only win championships, but also make the playoffs.
Especially in this situation where you need to actually make a run in the end of the regular season. So I'm going to go with Bayern Munich, not necessarily finishing 6th, but being in the playoffs. Just because of their system, because of Coach Trinchieri, because they are tactically very smart. They have experience, they have enough quality, they play good basketball. I know they lost their last game at home against Olympiacos, but let's be real, Olympiacos played an amazing game, and in some moments they looked unstoppable. It was a very high-scoring game. I know that Bayern has a difficult schedule, and that kind of goes against them, but I just believe that a mastermind like Trinchieri will find a way to win some games, and they will be there in the end.
We can mention that they're going to play 5 of their last 6 games on away games, and it's Fenerbahce, Milan, Panathinaikos, FS, and Real Madrid, and only game against Zvezda is at home. But what I have to mention as well is that they're finally not just finding their rhythm, but they're getting their injured players back,
Hillard is
especially
back.
like Darno Hillard. It's great to see Paul Zipser finally back on track, at least in German championship. So all the bodies are here, except from Nick Weiler-Bob. That was a horrible injury. So at least it's not that serious how we thought at first. But okay, they are facing the tough schedule, but at the same time, the current format situation, that this decision really helps them a lot. It puts them in the sixth seed with 12 victories, and they're like the Monaco as the 8th seed. There are 2 wins behind them, and they played. They have 23 games, like Bayern. They have 22. So. Tough schedule is bad for them, but the current situation is better. All the bodies are coming back. Just as you said, I trust Andrea Trinchieri, and I also have them in my playoff picture.
If we try to count, let's say they beat Zvezda at home and they beat Pau away. These are winnable games. Then they need one more win from...
Especially if they win against Fenerbahce, it's already.
I mean, if they win these 2, they need one more win from the remaining games. If it's against Fenerbahce, the upcoming game, then there's no question about it. But Milano Olympia at the moment seems beatable. Real Madrid, who knows how they will approach the final game of the regular season. I mean, you cannot even rule out a scenario where Bayern would qualify with 14 wins.
Oh, no. I tried to count, let's say, most logical outcome of the end of the regular season, and it seems like the 14 for sure should be enough. And I predict a tiebreaker. I think that we will have at least 2 teams on the line, for the playoffs, and it will be decided by the home away games between these teams. So the next team after Bayern Munich, I'm going with Fenerbahce, although they're in the, let's say, worst position right now. 10th seed, 9 victories, 13 losses, and it's going to be a tough task for them, especially with the current situation. Nando De Colo is back, but he needs time to get back in shape. All the rest of the group also, they need to adjust. They're waiting for Jan Vesely, which is very strange because it's supposed to be like that. I mean, it was about that Vesely is coming back first, and then De Colo joins him, but he's still out, and they kind of lost their track. But at the same time, I think that they're on the easiest schedule. They still have 6 games to play, and they're playing Bayern at home, Baskonia away, Barca away, Alba home, Panathinaikos home, and Maccabi away. So potentially, I see them winning against Baskonia, Alba, Panathinaikos, probably against Maccabi and Bayern. So I see something between 4 or 5 victories. And it should be enough. Now we're 9 wins, so 14 means, it should be enough, I think.
Yeah, I will also put Fenerbahce in the playoffs. Maybe it's a little bit of wishful thinking from my side because so many things are against Fenerbahce this season. It definitely seems unfair, and you kind of want to cheer for them. And they have enough quality to win games. I mean, obviously their situation is a little bit more difficult because they need some catching up to do. Again, they and Monaco are the clubs that suffer from the current EuroLeague's decision, because Monaco would be on a 50% winning and Fenerbahce would be 48 or 49, something like that. They lost the Istanbul derby. They lost some games, for example, against Zvezda, which was played on Sunday. If they got that win, it would definitely be a huge boost for them. They lost against Monaco as well, away from home. They needed actually at least one win from these 3 games. Now it puts them in a difficult situation with a 3-game losing streak. But as you said, the schedule is looking kind of, I don't know, friendly towards them. There are no easy games in EuroLeague, obviously, but with players coming back, first of all, they need to go game by game, obviously, and they need to approach this game against Bayern as a final.
Of course.
This is a final. They need to win this.
And it would be better if they would win it by more than 8 points, actually.
Yep,
because in the first round they
you need
lost
to start
by 8.
counting, definitely.
And it's really important to mention, that Monaco, they have an advantage against Fenerbahce, and Fenerbahce has the advantage against Maccabi. But as I said, not only the schedule, but also for them, it's good that they're playing against, their direct rivals for the playoffs. So winning against them should really help them. And I don't think that they're as bad as the 3-game losing streak says right now about them. I mean, both of these last 2 losses against Zvezda and Efes, they were like, crunch time losses. In my eyes, they were lacking of some leadership from Pierre Henry. He was out. Marko Guduric didn't have the good performance in 4 quarters. For example, in Belgrade, he went scoreless. He was only 3 from 15 beyond the arc in both of these games. So, I mean, they're always close. A lot of goes to injuries, just not making open shots. It was the same problem for Fenerbahce in the beginning of the season. So I believe that when they will have all the bodies back, they will be better and they will make that final run. Although it's kind of, bold prediction because, as I mentioned, the situation is not in their favor at the moment.
We saw them in the Istanbul derby. They played in a cup final. Also, they played a EuroLeague game against Anadolu Efes. And now that Efes is actually playing the way they're supposed to, when Vasa Micic is dominating games the way he's supposed to, and Shane Larkin is closing games, and Rodrigo Boba is making shots, and Tibor Pleiss is causing you problems on these pick-and-pop situations, we do see that Anadolu Efes is still ahead of Fenerbahce. I mean, they're still the better team. However, Fenerbahce made a comeback in the last game against Efes. Efes were leading by like 18 points. Fenerbahce made a comeback. Guduric made some big plays. They made some big plays on defense as well, but again, they just couldn't handle Larkin in the end, and during the game, they couldn't handle Micic. They were trying different options, putting Daishan Pierre on him, Shehmouz Hazer. Micic, at the moment, seems unstoppable, the way he was playing in the FS championship season.
I agree.
And another thing, again, since we're putting the number 10 seed in the playoffs, which team is going to drop? So my first option is Maccabi.
I have no doubts about Maccabi.
I watched their last game against Baskonia. They won it by a single point, by a single shot of Scotty Wilbekin off the screen when Matthew Costello decided to drop instead of going up against Scotty Wilbekin. They just gave away an open look to a player like Scotty. He made a three-pointer. They won it, but there was no defense in this game. And I cannot believe that Maccabi, with this defense, they fired Coach Sfairopoulos, that they can be consistent and win games, win enough games. Although right now they would be ranked 7th, I think they're going to drop.
Yeah, and I actually checked the offensive and defensive ratings of all these 6 teams since February, and it more or less it was like 5-game stretch. And Maccabi had the worst defensive rating. They were only 17th. The offensive rating was 13. And as you said, I mean, I was missing that chemistry both on and off the court even before the season. I mean, I had all these doubts about them if they will click together. And I mean, they're just too unpredictable. They're too offensive oriented, and I just don't believe that they can keep that their 7th seed.
The talent is there, but there's a lack of of system and lack of discipline,
lack
rules,
of leadership.
and
Now they
defense.
have a different coach, interim coach, so it's very bad timing for Maccabi, although this situation somehow put them in the playoff race, and it's an incredible luck for them.
Well, so far we agree on everything. What about the last team?
The last team, somehow I know that we won't agree on this. But for the last team, although I have to admit that I will be cheering for Zvezda because they're a low-budget team. I like the way they're grinding all these victories. I like the group of guys because it's the real team. But in this situation, I go with talent, and I go with Monaco. I have to say that despite that loss, excluding that loss against Žalgiris, they were playing probably the best basketball after Anadolu Efes, and it's clear that with Sasha Obradovic, they finally found their rhythm. And I believe that with 5 games to play in the end of the regular season for them, although the schedule is not very easy. For example, they're playing against Efes at home, but Efes, they are hot. They're playing Olympiacos at home, another very tough game. Milan away game, and Baskonia and Alba at home. So I predict at least 2 victories for them, and it's not very clear if 12 victories to make the playoffs. It's a very hard task, so they will have to overachieve. But at the same time, I believe the talent they have, and as I mentioned before, I think that their only opponent is just themselves. When they start all this bullshit, losing the concentration defensively in the decisive moments, or stopping sharing the ball in the end of the games. They lost so many games when they switched their team basketball, sharing the ball to these ISO situations, and some off the court stuff when sometimes pops out in Monaco. It's destroying themselves, and they have enough talent to beat almost all EuroLeague teams, but they're still missing, that thing which describes the team. They're still not as united as the team, for example, like Zvezda is.
I will disagree with you on this one. I'm not putting Monaco in the playoffs. The funny thing is actually that the very last shot against the Russian team in this EuroLeague season was Mike James' game winner over Marcos Pisu against Unix Kazan. And apparently didn't matter.
Probably that was the only one, the only game winner of Mike James this year, right?
I'm not sure. He made some clutch shots in Kaunas when they faced Žalgiris in an overtime, but he missed some last-second shots, and he was criticized for his decisions.
It was not
he was not driving to the paint. He was doing this sidestep three-pointer against Tavares or Nibo. But against Pisu, it made sense because he wasn't against a smaller...
Finally, they managed.
Yeah, he was against a smaller opponent. However, I watched the game against Barcelona where they played, and I had very mixed feelings during this game because at the same time, I saw why Monaco should be in the playoffs and why they shouldn't. So... First, about the positives, why they should be in the playoffs. There's so much talent. They can make a comeback against Barcelona from being 12, 14 points down by using their...
They made that great comeback against CSKA, but now it just doesn't matter at all.
Of course. But, you see they're being down by 12 or 14 points against the best team in the EuroLeague right now, and you're thinking, the game should be over. It's the third quarter. Then Dwayne Bacon makes some crazy shots. Then Donatas Motiejunas makes some beautiful plays in the paint. Mike James scores some points, scores some buckets, and all of a sudden they are back. But then on the other side of the court, you see why they shouldn't be in the playoffs. They're not playing any defense, and they're losing concentration in situations where you cannot afford to. 2 times Barca punished them with an inbound pass from the baseline. There were no screens, no nothing. Nikola Mirotic was just standing near the 3-point line, wide open. And twice he punished them with these easy routine shots. And after those, the Monaco players were just looking at each other like, what? What's wrong with you? Why didn't you move? Why didn't you do something? And then in the crunch time during the last 2 minutes, Barca were doing all the right things, which you're not surprised about. They're coached by Šarūnas Jasikevičius. They know how to attack opponents. They know their weaknesses, so they were using Brandon Davis in the paint. They were aggressive. They were getting easy buckets. They were getting second chances. Monaco just could not defend. And then you're expecting Monaco to do something better on offense, but in the last 2 minutes, they just couldn't get the ball in Mike James's hands, first of all. Mike James was denied, and they did not find a way to give him the ball. Then when they were down by 3 and they needed a play after a timeout, to me it seemed like there was a play drawn for Dwayne Bacon, but when the screen was set, Dwayne Bacon didn't move. And the other player started looking at him and, what are you doing, man? So Alpha Diallo had to do some stuff he is not supposed to be doing in the very last seconds. He got an offensive foul. They lost the game. I don't trust this team, actually, to be consistent and be in the playoffs. You mentioned their schedule is difficult. Even though they're playing at home against Efes and Olympiacos in their current form, I think they're going to lose these games. They should win against Baskonia and Alba at home. Then they have a game in Milan. I don't think it's going to be enough. I'm going with Crvena Zvezda and their mentality, their defense. Actually, I will be brave in predicting 2 wins for Crvena Zvezda this week. I think today they will win against Real Madrid at home, and then they will win against Maccabi on the 10th of March. This is a really good moment to actually play Real Madrid. They're struggling right now. You're hearing some rumors about Pablo Laso. Ever since the Copa del Rey, Real Madrid do not seem themselves. They don't seem like the royal club of Spain. They were trashed by Žalgiris. I saw them last weekend against Baskonia in the ACB League. They looked powerless, and they lost this game. So this is a very good moment for Zvezda to face Real Madrid. And if they get these 2 wins this week, they're in a very good position. Their upcoming games are against Alba Berlin, Bayern Munich. They're still facing Žalgiris, and the last game at home against Anadolu Efes. So I'm going with Zvezda in the top 8.
Yeah, that's a clever choice, actually. The problem with Zvezda is that all of these games against Alba, Bayern, or Žalgiris, these at least 2 must-wins for them. They will play all these games away, and this year they won only 2 games and not in Belgrade. So they will have to, let's say, step over themselves in this situation and to show the best form. But I really agree with you. I like this choice, and when we're talking about this last playoff position, I cannot forget the loss against Žalgiris. What was the price of that game for Monaco? Even game against Real Madrid, they had plenty of opportunities to kill Real Madrid in decisive moments, but they
actually didn't. At home they lost against Madrid in 2 overtimes, and they lost against Barca in an overtime when they were still coached by Zvezdan Mitrovic. So these were 2 big chances.
As well, half-court game winner. I mean, that's a terrible luck, but every game matters. That's the EuroLeague.
What you said, every game matters except from those that
of course,
canceled.
now it doesn't matter at all. Yeah.
But what you said makes sense. Of course, it's logical to go with talent, and they are still in a better position right now in the standings. However, in the EuroLeague, logic does not prevail that often. Not only talking about the standings, also about the decision making. So Crvena Zvezda, I will go with them.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bacon. I mean, he's already a legend. I've had some conversations with EuroLeague players, and Dwayne Bacon is a great talent. He's capable of making incredible shots. He can decide games because of his talent, but at the same time, something is really wrong with his focus. And I know you mentioned this, frozen moment of Dwayne Bacon in the end of the game, and I was told the same about his defense. I mean, he's just standing in one place and just not doing nothing, and he's the most favorite matchup by probably every EuroLeague player. So, and I've heard that he was on the brink of leaving Monaco, not only once, I guess, but it seems like the owner of Monaco really loves him, and it's just another funny story about Dwayne Bacon.
He has this tunnel vision. He never sees what's happening in the corners. If he has the ball in isolation, you can be sure it's either a step back 3, or he's going to drive to the paint, try to draw a foul, try to finish with a floater or a layup, but he never sees what's happening in the corners. It's like this always, all the time. He's a great player. He's very talented, but I wouldn't have him on my team if I'm trying to make the playoffs in the EuroLeague.
Especially when you have Mike James, another huge offensive weapon who's also needs some freedom offensively.
It's actually scandalous that Mike James did not have the ball in his hands during the very last minutes of the game against Barcelona. I know maybe sometimes Mike James does not make the best decision, but when it's a close game, you must put the ball in his hands. It doesn't make sense to see Alpha Diallo making big plays. wow. I mean, and again, Coach Obradovic is actually doing a better job than we expected.
Of course.
So if we're talking about Monaco for the next season, I think they should keep Sasha Obradovic and try to build a team with him.
No doubt.
Just clear out some of the players that do not fit his philosophy, his ideas, his system.
Yeah, and we're not criticizing Monaco. I mean, they had to build the team from scratch. They had the major changes in September, changing the whole picture.
They wanted to make some noise in the EuroLeague, which is why they signed big names.
And they did. And we're talking about them as the potential playoff team, which is the best thing which could happen for the team like Monaco.
It's just a very open question right now whether they will be in the EuroLeague next season or not. Because, I mean, we were talking during the season about this situation that if Unix or Monaco make the playoffs, they are the teams coming from the EuroCup, they should keep their place. Right now, there's so much uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen with the Russian teams. We don't know how the places will be given for next season's EuroLeague. So Monaco is also in uncertainty, whether they will be in EuroLeague or not. We heard from Mike James that staying in Monaco is an option. However, one main condition is to play in the EuroLeague.
I would actually like to see Monaco in the EuroLeague next year. It would be actually great to see them, getting this right to stay in the EuroLeague by themselves, by making the playoffs. Because I heard that they're ready to invest even more money for their roster, and with smart adjustments, building the team around Mike James, around other pieces, they can be really, really great. They're already, let's say they're overachieved. They're close to their maximum, but at the same time, we're talking about Monaco and them securing their spot in the EuroLeague if they will make the playoffs. And now we see Zvezda, and for example, if they make the playoffs, there are no guarantees that they will stay in the EuroLeague, because they're coming from ABA League. There's another another regulation for them as well, as far as I know. I mean, it's so weird that, for example, if Zvezda won't win the Adriatic League, I'm not so sure if they will be allowed to stay in the EuroLeague because of the regulations. It's another crazy thing about this tournament. Too much uncertainty, really. Too much uncertainty.
But okay, in conclusion, I have Bayern, Fenerbahce, and Crvena Zvezda making the playoffs, and you have Fenerbahce, Bayern, and Monaco.
Yeah, and FS, of course.
One part of me says that it would be very exciting to see Monaco in the playoffs. Mike James is my favorite player, so I kind of want him to be there. But the other side of me is saying that Crvena Zvezda deserve it a little bit more, and they just look like a potentially better playoff team because they have defense.
Yeah, Zvezda against Barcelona. It wouldn't be the the best playoff matchup. I mean, I don't see Zvezda from the quality-wise
doing something like, for example, Xavi Pascual did last year. But at least in Belgrade, in their atmosphere, they could snatch a win, at least one win in the playoff series. Monaco against Barca, it's too easy for Sharas to find their weaknesses, how to attack them. It's just too easy. This season, Barcelona is actually more of an offensive team than last season when we knew them because of their best defensive record rating in Europe.
I actually want Monaco in the playoffs just because I think that they have more potential in the playoffs to make the upset. And I will check how they played Real Madrid. Okay, there was that overtime game in Monaco. The game in Madrid was pretty close, although Real built the early big lead.
Madrid just seems a different story right now.
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about potentially
and it's
facing
not a bad
Barcelona,
matchup for Monaco, actually. Both games against Barcelona were close. I mean, the first one in Monaco, Barcelona won by 4, and the second one in Barca, they won by 5. So I don't know. I just think that...
But I just saw recently that last game. I know they lost only by 5. But at the same time, I saw too many reasons why they cannot
the
win. The
unpredictability of this team is both their big problem, but at the same time, some kind of advantage. Because there's so much potential for unpredictable things.
I think in a EuroLeague playoff series...
it's a whole different story.
You need strategy. Tactics is very important, preparing a game plan. And Monaco is just not the team to do that. I mean, they would play a playoff game the same way they're playing the regular season games. It makes no difference to Dwayne Bacon, whether
what tactics you were talking about when there's Dwayne Bacon on the court?
So Let's agree to disagree on this one. I mean, my heart would like to see Monaco and Mike James, but my brain says that Crvena Zvezda should be in the top 8.
I really respect your choice. Very good one. And the another thing which was impacted, and not just the standings of the EuroLeague, but at the same time the EuroLeague market. And we see some big fishes moving out of Russia. Some of them, they're just left for the United States, for example. Some of them already terminated their contracts.
Some of them are posting triple doubles.
Some of them,
VTB League.
In the VTB League with...
Mario Hezonja against Smoky Minsk.
With Mone, Fridzon, Bialtsev. Like, they're back. They're finally back. These are, especially Mone. I love Mone. Personally, he's a great player, but this league is very, very weird. But okay, they didn't deserve any of our attention on this podcast. But anyway, the team which is doing good with fishing is for sure Virtus Bologna. I mean, that's the big move for any EuroLeague team. But now we have EuroCup club signing Daniel Hackett until 2024, and now signing Tornike Shengelia until and the end of the season. And when it takes Virtus, we have to know that, I mean, it seems like the coffee business is doing good because Virtus owner, Massimo Zanetti, he's the owner of Segafredo coffee brand, and it's one of the biggest brands in the whole world, I would say. And since he became the major shareholder of the team, the major owner of the team, he's spending it a lot. We already saw signings of Teodosic, of Bellinelli, of all the other players they had. And now with Hackett, with Shengelia, they're raising the main question. Is it the EuroCup title team? Are we talking about the favorites to win the EuroCup title?
Yes, we are. However, the EuroCup format is very tricky. And even if you have the best team and the best roster, there are no guarantees. However, yeah, they were one of the favorites already. We were comparing them, for example, with Partizan, and we had a discussion, who would you take in a best-of-5 series, and we agreed that Virtus probably would win it. And right now they're adding Dani Hackett, who is playing his best basketball right now. In the last 2 or 3 years, he really was at his peak. I mean, you consider him a veteran because of his age, but he's in a very good shape and he's playing his best basketball. I mean, he had injuries when he played in Greece for Olympiacos. He struggled for a couple of years. He moved to CSKA, and during the last few seasons, he had record-breaking performances.
Yeah, just recently he had a career-high game against EuroLeague champions.
He became a consistent three-point shooter, which he wasn't 8 or 9 years ago when he last played in Italy. This is the best version of Dani Hackett that we saw during his whole career. And obviously he's an Italian player, so it's nice for him to be back home. It's nice for Bologna Virtus to sign an Italian player, one of the best Italian players right now that became available on the market. And to add Dani Hackett's experience with Milos Teodosic and Marco Bellinelli already being there, the IQ of this team is insane, really. And Tornike Shengelia, well, you're adding muscle power. He was a dominant player in EuroLeague when he played for Baskonia. Maybe it was a little bit more difficult for him in CSKA. It was a different environment, but I just cannot imagine how EuroCup teams would stop Tornike Shengelia and his power.
Yeah.
So obviously it makes them favorites. However, the format in the EuroCup is tricky, as I said. Another thing, these moves make the local rivalry between Milan and Bologna very intriguing. The final series with all these legendary veterans on one side, Chacho Rodriguez, Kyle Hines, Malcolm Delaney on the other side, Teodosic, Bellinelli, Hackett, Shengelia. You have Messina against Cariolo. It would be a great series. So these are big moves actually for Virtus.
Yeah, Dani Hackett's covers. I mean, Hackett, Teodosic, Bellinelli, Shengelia, and whatever it is, Jaiteg or Udo when he will come back after the injury. I mean, that's the EuroLeague playoff material in my eyes. And Dani Hackett adds what Monaco, Virtus, what they're missing. They were kind of mediocre defensively this year. They had 12th best defensive rating in the EuroCup. Especially they had problems protecting the perimeter. They allowed second worst 38% of 3-point shots. And when Teodosic was out especially, it seemed like they were lacking of some leadership, because I love Pajola. I like Nico Mannion, although he's having a tough year. But they're just too young to lead the team in tough situations. And Danny Hackett will solve a lot of things, because basically Virtus, they had a difficult season. They're only fifth in the EuroCup, fifth or fourth in the EuroCup.
They failed in the cup competition.
Yeah, they lost 4 of their last 6 games. They failed in the cup in semifinals, if I'm correct. I mean, that was a very tough season for them, and it's not a surprise that they're making moves, and especially when the market and the situation of Russian teams open some crazy options for them. Although the Shengelia story is very interesting, because Hackett was kind of, that needed perimeter player which could cover some holes of Virtus game, and Shengelia is something extra, But at the same time, I heard that it was the personal request of Sergio Scariolo, because he wasn't happy with the current situation with his front line. It seemed like the Jakar Simpson signing was not as good as everybody. Jakar Sampson signing was not as good as they thought, and he needed a powerful guy under the basket, which could cover both power forward and center positions. And these negotiations were super hard, because differently from Hackett's situation, Hackett was in a expiring contract, and he had to pay from his own pockets, let's say, only 100,000 euros. Shengelia was under the contract, and the contract was signed until 2023. So he had to pay way bigger buyout just to get himself free, and basically both of these players were paying from their own pocket, because Virtus, they were paying only the salary. At least it was reported that Hackett will get around 2.7 million until 2024. Shengelia's deal is way smaller than Hackett's. But anyway, the negotiations were so difficult that even if they found agreement with Virtus before, there was a high level of concern that they might not get free of CSKA contract. But at the end of the day, CSKA, they're in a bad situation, and there's no way that they're coming back to the EuroLeague, but at the same time, they could do, everything just to keep their players, at least for the summer, just to check what will happen the next year. But at least they didn't put any, restrictions or, didn't kept them, making them very unhappy. So Virtus made the last-minute move just before the deadline. But what is interesting about Shengelia, that there is a rumor, and it was already reported by Italian newspaper Corriere di Bologna. And what is interesting, that I heard it from 2 sources as well, and kind of reliable sources, that after his contract with Virtus will be finished, he's kind of set, or he's close to sign with Barcelona for like multi-year deal. And I was a bit surprised about that, because they have Nikola Mirotic and Shengelia as a backup. Of course, that would be an amazing addition, but I don't see Shengelia being very happy with the backup role. Okay, there's an advantage because he's treated as a local player in Spain, because he already played there so many years. He played in Valencia's youth system. But I just don't get it. Either it's fake news, or either it has to be some Sharas masterclass, another crazy decision. Like with Sertac Shanli, we were not sure if it will be a very good fit, for Barcelona, but it appeared to be way better than we thought. And now Shengelia, I don't know. I just don't see that happening unless Mirotic is leaving. I mean, it takes a lot of brainstorming to find fit for Shengelia and Barcelona.
Yeah, that's strange. Thinking about Shengelia's future, well, first of all, let's not rule out that if Virtus Bologna is successful and this season and they qualify for the EuroLeague, they might extend him. Why not, if he feels happy? So that's one option I would see. Another one, I was talking about this when we had these hypothetical trade scenarios for EuroLeague teams, and I was saying that Anadolu Efes sort of need refreshments. They have Moorman and Singleton at the power forward position, and Shengelia could actually be an improvement and could replace one of these players. I mean, I know he's not a stretch four type of a player, but still, you need a strong body, a power forward that can actually play at the 5 position as well. So it would make sense for me if Anadolu Efes signs Shengelia to replace, let's say, Adrian Morman. That's one idea that I have in my head. Another one is Baskonia, if they're doing a massive rebuild and they want to invest a little bit more money and they need a star player, sign Toko Shengelia. That is already one of your own players. Fans love him. Everybody loves him in Baskonia. I believe he has a personal relationship with the Basque county, so why not? I mean, right now, Baskonia is in the bottom of the standings, but they could do a rebuild, and I could see Shengelia being part of it. Other than that, I don't see him in Barcelona. I don't see him in Real Madrid.
I don't see him in Milan, really. They have Meli, Mitoglu.
Yeah, so these are the best.
Olympiacos, they can't pay him enough.
So Efes and Baskonia are the best options I could imagine. And the other option being Bologna Virtus in the EuroLeague, an interesting project, and Shengelia just being part of it.
Yeah,
but Barcelona, I'm really surprised about these news.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great guy. He's a team first player, and maybe, he's already 30 years old, and maybe he's about winning right now.
He hasn't won the EuroLeague.
That's why he signed with CSKA.
He actually only played in one Final Four.
With Baskonia.
When they qualified,
Yeah.
That's the only one.
Yeah, and Baskonia, they were always underdogs in the EuroLeague competition, so maybe he's going to accept this role. Maybe they're going to rest Nikola Mirotic more. Maybe Shengelia will play more as a center. I don't know. It would be an amazing addition for Barcelona as well, of course, talent-wise. And I believe that Charas will find him a good fit, but I would be really, really surprised. But as I said, it was already reported. Sources are suggesting that something is happening. His camp is not. It's kind of denying it. It's too early, and it's obviously he will have a lot of offers this summer as a free agent. But that's gonna be another. Let's say he's gonna be a very unexpected free agent, and it will be very interesting to follow his path.
Okay, but right now, for a fact, we know that Virtus added Hackett and Shengelia. So Messina against Cariolo. I don't know if they're playing best of 7 or best of 5 in Italy this season. Who are you picking? Everyone's healthy?
I think I'm going with Milan because there's more continuity in that team. Virtus, it's a new project, new coach, new philosophy. They had so many injury problems. Probably Scariolo didn't have full healthy team at any moment of the season. And he will have to wait for all these pieces to be back. I like Virtus on the paper, but I just think that Milan, they're more consistent. They're very experienced. They know each other very well, and now they are deeper than they were last year. It's funny because now Virtus is way more talented team than the last year, but the year they swept Milan. But this time, watching how long it takes for Virtus to build that winning project, I think that Milan has a slight advantage.
Yeah, last season maybe Milan, they were really frustrated and tired of the EuroLeague's Final Four, and they just could not focus on the Italian League playoffs. I would be really excited to see this series, and if it's best of 7, I would like to see it going down to the Game 7. Maybe I would go with Virtus, actually. I cannot consider a team with Teodosic, Bellinelli, Hackett, and Shengelia underdogs in any context.
Yeah.
But it would be really interesting because, as I said, there's a lot of experience and quality in both of these teams. And I'm really happy to see Italian basketball on the rise again. Let's remember, back in the days, Italian clubs were actually dictating fashion in whole Europe. I mean, they had not only Bologna, they had Milan, they had Benetton Treviso, they had Montepaschi Siena. They had amazing teams and financial power as well.
Probably the strongest league in Europe.
Probably it was. They had a financial power, they had everything. And then there was this like a sad decade when some of these clubs were going into bankruptcy, like Montepaschi, for example. Some of these clubs simply declined. And basically, Italian basketball for a lot of years now has been only one team, financed by Giorgio Armani, playing in the EuroLeague, but being unsuccessful, spending a lot of money, signing a lot of players, but not winning anything, not making the playoffs, not making the Final Four. And this was the face of the Italian club basketball recently. Now we see Olimpia Milano, coached by Ettore Messina, making the Final Four, competing in the EuroLeague, making smart moves on the market. We see Bologna Virtus on the rise again. They're trying to get back in the EuroLeague, and they will be in EuroLeague next year or the year after. Eventually, they should be there. So it's nice to see Italian basketball being once again a European powerhouse, because for the last 10 or more years, there was nothing, actually.
Yeah, Scariolo against Messina, what a finals. I mean, what's funny that it's still hard to believe that Scariolo won the Italian championship when he was 30 years old, or 31 year old. Messina, for the first time, he won the Italian championship when he was 34. And after 30 years, they are back.
They came back from the NBA with a different approach. They really learned a lot, I believe, being in the NBA. Now they are not only coaches, they are like GMs at the same time. They are building teams, not only coaching teams.
It's a big time for Italian basketball.
We were talking a lot about the Belgrade derby, for example, how interesting it is this season to see Zvezda against Partizan. El Clasico, yes, another big one. Istanbul derby. Right now, Anadolu Efes have the upper hand, but still, it's exciting to see Efes against Fenerbahce. We never mentioned the Italian league. But right now, to me, after these signings, the rivalry between Virtus and Olimpia probably is the most exciting one from these that I mentioned. I mean, in the El Clasico, I had a lot of expectations for Real Madrid this season, but like I said, since Copa del Rey happened, Barca not only looks the better team, but they sort of like in last season's situation. Real Madrid is now losing against Žalgiris, and Barca continuing what they do. And this one, wow, going to be interesting.
Real, they're on a bad streak. They lost 6 of their last 9 games. As you mentioned, they lost the El Clasico, and they lost 10 of 13 last El Clasicos against Barcelona. Yeah. And actually, we were surprised because yesterday there was a report of Marca which said that within the club there are other voices that believe that Laso has lost the control of the locker room and that the situation is irretrievable. They also think that the wear and tear of a position that devoured coaches until he arrived is noticeable. And it's a Google translation, so don't blame me. But anyway, the main idea of the report is that Laso could be in a hot seat. What is very important to mention that Lucas says Bravo, solid journalist from El Mundo, tweeted that in case anyone has any doubts, Laso is not in danger today. He has the full support of the club in what is considered a bad run. So, but you know, it's strange to hear anything coming from Marca because we kind of know that it's related to Real Madrid. It's kind of Real Madrid rumor, just like Mundo Deportivo about Barcelona. So something is going on, and I'm kind of surprised because maybe I'm too patient with all these processes and stuff, but I cannot understand what can you ask more from Pablo Laso and what he did in the last 10 years. He brought the culture. He's the coach who any other coach can manage involving young players and achieving and reaching for the highest goals, just like Pablo Laso did, getting 21 youth team player on the main team roster. Actually, in the last 6 years, Real Madrid won the EuroLeague twice. Only CSKA Moscow did it. And before, in the last 20 years, only Panathinaikos in the span of 5-6 years, they won the EuroLeague the 3 times, and it was Željko era with Šaras, with Diamantidis, and with all these legends. So, I mean, not only he's producing and giving the opportunity for young players, not only he brought the culture, he built the culture, and he's achieving, big time results. I mean, he did everything he could. So for me, it's very weird to see that he could be on the hot seat. Okay, they're playing bad right now, but all teams, they're going through bad stretches. And I just don't get it, and I would be really surprised if that's the real concern in Real Madrid's front office.
Well, before that, we heard rumors about them signing Shane Larkin. So if they add Shane Larkin for next season, it's a completely different picture, because this season they are a very big team and they became a defensive team with their defensive presence, but obviously lacking creativity on offense, because Sergio Llull is not as good as he once was, because Thomas Hertel is not very consistent, because Nigel Williams-Goss is kind of disappointing. You have to put Abalde in the point guard position, but he's not a true point guard, and it sort of creates a similar situation that was last season. So still, they did not replace Facundo Campazzo properly, even though I really thought when they signed Hertel and Williams-Goss that it should be enough for them. However, yeah, it's really strange to me also, these rumors about Pablo Laso. They're still in a position to challenge for both titles, for the EuroLeague and the Spanish League. I know they lost the Copa del Rey final, but it was a difficult final for Barca. I mean, Real Madrid maybe were one Gabriel Dex layup away from winning it, or at least tying it in the end of the fourth quarter. So, I mean, they could have won this title. They didn't. Obviously, Barcelona is dominating El Clásicos recently, and Pablo Laso is trying to find a way how he can stop Barcelona. And the only option for them right now is going big and trying to pack the paint and win by defense. I could see Pablo Laso, let's say, leaving after the season in a mutual agreement with the club. But to see him fired during the season, I mean, come on, after 11 years,
not possible.
I don't think it's possible. And if you would fire him now, let's say, you replace him with who? Chus Mateo, his assistant coach? What does it change? Pablo Laso deserves more respect, I believe.
Yeah, I've actually heard that there's kind of feeling in Spain that Pablo Laso is kind of, undervalued coach in Real Madrid, because at least I've heard that he was, let's say, underpaid in terms of what his level coaches are getting there in Europe. And always, if something went wrong, everybody was talking about Pablo Laso. But I mean, all of his achievements, especially the last year situation, show me and give me any other coach who would deal with the situation where you're losing one of the top guards in the EuroLeague. Then during the season, then you lose Gabriel Deg, another important player, dealing with so many injuries, and still being competitive enough to play the Game 5 against the EuroLeague champions.
I mean, replacing Pablo Laso in this situation is not simply replacing a coach. That would be an end of an era, similar to what happened, let's say, in Panathinaikos, when Željko Obradović era ended. Everything has an ending. Pablo Laso might leave Real Madrid after this season, after next season, but to fire him during the season would be disrespectful, really.
Oh, yeah.
Let him try to go through this difficult path right now. They're losing games. They're not playing good enough. It's obvious. I mean, not only in the EuroLeague. As I said, I watched on Sunday them against Baskonia. It was terrible. But let him try to fix things. Worst case scenario, what? They lose in the Final Four, or they lose in top 8 and they lose the ACB League finals, and this would be considered a bad season for Real Madrid. But it's not like a disaster or something. You can rebuild. You can sign one player. One signing makes a difference. Shane Larkin.
They're lacking of Shane Larkin. That's it.
Give Pablo Laso Shane Larkin and he starts winning games again. So
yeah, because this team clearly needs the rebuild. The rebuild has started.
Replace some veterans, because
and they need to
with all
replace
due respect to Rudy
veterans.
Fernandez and Sergio Llull, their time is over.
Yeah. Just like with Vasilis Panoulis, you just have to move on and find new leaders. And Shane Larkin, if that's true, and at least from the reactions we saw, it seems like it could be true. I mean, Shane Larkin, for sure, he denied everything, because in his position, it would be stupid to do anything differently. Pablo Laso's reaction was kind of different. He didn't deny it firmly. He said that these rumors hurt the team just before the Copa del Rey, but he wasn't so categorical, denying these rumors.
If the question is to Pablo Laso or, I don't know, Florentino Perez, are you interested in signing Shane Larkin? The obvious answer would be, yes, we are, because anyone would be interested in signing Shane Larkin. But if there's an agreement on the table already, who knows?
Okay, And our 5 cents for the last week's EuroLeague games goes to Panathinaikos and Milan, and especially the referees,
yeah,
right?
we mentioned some of the other games already in the context of the playoff race. And this one
Left a bad taste.
Really. Olimpia Milano, they escaped with a win from Oaxaca, and I don't want to criticize them for the way they played. It was not a very good game for Ettore Messina's team. They had some beautiful plays in transition with Chacho Rodriguez. They had Malcolm Delaney actually hitting shots. He was the best player on the court that night. They were leading the game. They got themselves in trouble in the end, but after the match, no one's actually talking about Delaney's shots or Sergio Rodriguez's passes or Kyle Hines hitting a clutch free throw. Everyone's just talking about the referees, and the refereeing was really poor. It was really sad to see it.
In the last 3 minutes of the game, I counted at least 3 situations with bad calls. Vasilis Kavadas, he was elbowed. Nothing happened. No call. When the ball went out of bounds by Gianpaolo Ricci, clearly Milan got the ball. Especially the last situation, Kyle Hines, he's an amazing player. Just another incredible offensive rebound for the all-time EuroLeague offensive rebounder. And he decided the game with his clutch free throw. Missed the second free throw on purpose. That was a clear offensive foul by Gianpaolo Ricci under the basket. And Panathinaikos should have been rewarded with 2 free throws, and who knows, maybe they made that incredible comeback and they won that game. Before even there was a situation with Kaselakis who kind of lost the ball, but it seemed like the Delaney clearly made a foul. So
Definitely.
we're talking about at least 3 or 4 situations which turned into Milan's favor. And do not get me wrong, I mean, Milan is a way better team. They deserve that victory. But just the ending of the game was really bad.
And I actually am not so sure about deserving the victory, because Milan didn't play a good game, and Panathinaikos bounced back after a shameful performance against Žalgiris. Against Milan, they played really solid. They were in control. At the end of the game, they lost the control. Milan was up by 8. Then there were some mistakes, turnovers that you do not expect from experienced players, like Sergio Rodriguez losing the ball and Nedovic after the steal tying the game. But these refereeing decisions really were in favor of Milan. Panathinaikos suffered. However, no one's making a really big fuss about it just because Pau is in the bottom this season. They are not challenging for the playoffs. If this game would have meant more, and Panathinaikos lost it, there would be a lot of noise.
And if
there would be a lot of
Dimitris
noise.
Giannakopoulos was still the active owner of Panathinaikos, I see another penalty
and
coming
right now
for
everyone's
Panathinaikos.
just gonna forget it. So Milan just escaped with a win.
Very important win.
Yeah, it's
Can
very
imagine
important for
losing the
them.
game
For
and risking of
Panathinaikos,
being the 4th seeded team.
Didn't change much, but as a viewer, you were disappointed with what you saw. And I would like to end my take about this game mentioning Vasilis Kavadas, the strong body, the center that I really didn't see him much when he played in other teams like AEK or Aris. But looking at Kavadas, when he plays his back to the basket, he's scoring some hook shots. He's using his strong body. I'm thinking that this is not the right time for him to be a professional basketball player. He was born too late. 20 years ago in Europe, he would be one of the best centers. Right now, it's just too difficult for him, especially on defense. But 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago, with his body, he would be one of the best centers in Europe. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Lazaros Papadopoulos, although Papadopoulos was even bigger and better, but he kind of reminds me of him a little bit. And this just shows how the center position changed in Europe, obviously in NBA, but in Europe as well. When you have on one side of the court Kavadas or Papagiannis, and on the other side of the court you have Kyle Hines playing the 5th position.
Kavadas reminds me more of Simas Galdikas, kind of, Greek Simas Galdikas. And if Kazis Maksitis will get Žalgiris job in summer, he might bring Kavadas to Žalgiris.
He reminds me of Galdikas maybe because of his power and body, but Cavadas is more skilled,
Of
definitely.
course. He's playing in the EuroLeague at least. Although Galdikas, I think he played in the EuroLeague as well.
He did for Neptunas. He did. He actually made a game-winning shot.
Oh my God. He's a legend. He's a legend.
Yeah. Yeah, this was my last take from the game because during the week I saw Panathinaikos twice against Žalgiris and against Milan, and I was really...
Way more Panathinaikos games than you could usually watch.
Yes, I
normal routine.
actually, for the first time in the last 6 years, was watching Žalgiris at home because I didn't have to work. So I saw both of their games against Pau and against Alba Berlin just at home. It was a weird feeling.
We will have a lot of good games this week, actually. Let's start with Tuesday, for example. Zvezda, Real Madrid, as you mentioned, very important game for Zvezda if they want to make the playoffs. Then we will have Zvezda, Maccabi again on Thursday, another playoff decider. Real Madrid against Milan on Thursday as well. And on Friday, it's Monaco, Anadolu FS, and for us Lithuanians, it's going to be exciting to see Šarūnas Jasikevičius back in Žalgirio Arena with full crowd, with no empty seats like it was last year because of the COVID. So it's going to be very exciting and decisive week. We have most of the teams, they have only 6 games left, so
yeah.
Now every game really matters.
I'm looking forward to Zvezda's game today against Real Madrid, first of all, and on Thursday... The most interesting game to me is Real Madrid against Olimpia Milano. On Friday, Monaco against Anadolu Efes is like the game to watch. If you need to recommend a single game to your American friend, FS Monaco.
Yep.
There will be most talent on the court that there
most
can be in a EuroLeague game. Most offensive-oriented game. You will have Vasilija Micic, Shane Larkin, and Mike James on the same court. You will have Dwayne Bacon. You will have Demo's skills and everything. So this is the one to watch for example, an American basketball fan that is not really into EuroLeague and you want to present the EuroLeague to him. So Monaco and Anadolu Efes on Friday night.
Okay, man. Thanks a lot for your time, for your insights. And that's it.
That's it. Let's hope we will be back here next week.
And let's hope that by that time, the war will be over, although it's very optimistic prediction, knowing what we are facing.
Well, we're hoping for it every day.
On the other side.
We're hoping for it every day. So,
yeah, let's hope and support Ukraine as much as we can. We're doing some really good stuff here in Lithuania, supporting them. I mean, I was surprised that Lithuanians, they donated over 17 million euros in 10 days. Through all these organizations. I'm not even including military help or medicine help, which is coming out of the country. So that's incredible. Let's stay with Ukraine. Let's hope that the war will be over. For basketball-related stuff, you can always follow us on BasketNews.com, as well as on our YouTube channel, BasketNews.com, and you can find us on Spotify, URBONUS, just type URBONUS podcast and you will find all of our episodes. Thanks a lot and see you soon.